More people doing things to waste money and time. Hey, excellent. So because once again, there's no real economy because people can't do what they want because somebody somewhere said something. You know, you say something like, here's a rant. You say something like mind control, and people go like, he's crazy. And trust me, because I've written a couple of books on the topic, so I know a little bit about it. People's thinking can be controlled. People's thinking can be controlled. It's not that complicated. The mind is like a supercomputer, and you can control the information that goes in, and if you control the input, you control the output, basically. And you know, it's a thing. You can only I was listening to sometimes don't know why I'm talking about this. It's on my mind. Anyway, sometimes I go back and listen to my old sessions with students. Yeah. And I was doing that this morning. I was listening to some sessions from 3 or 4 years ago this morning. It's really interesting to listen to yourself from 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
And hear what you said and hear what is still true and what has changed, and also see where your own thinking is the same and where your own thinking is different. It's an interesting way to evaluate personal progress. And the session was about how to communicate with other people, and it was about life experiences that people have, and you can only communicate about what you know. It's really interesting. I think it's a really interesting point that of the session. It was an interesting point in the session that we had, that you can only communicate about what you know, and so you can only communicate about your experience, and your experience in life is like a really, really small part of a very big picture, right? You say you live in let's take the example. Let's say you live in a village and there's 200 people in your village. Well, your experience is a very, very, very small part of what happens in that village. And if we increase the size of the village, you get to see that your experience becomes smaller when you look at it on a bigger scale. Now, of course, to the individual, the experience is the number one thing, and it's very important. But objectively, from outside the box, if you look at it, the individual's experience is very small. And from that tiny, tiny, tiny little experience we have to try to understand everything. And it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And to think, and then when we realize that everybody has the same problem, everybody has a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of experience that they have to use to understand everything that's going on in the world. And, you know, if we think about topics, there are some topics that we know a lot about, some topics that we don't know a lot about. And what we know a lot about is a small part of things, and what we don't know is huge. Yeah. And then if we think about people making decisions and policies and people in control, they're in exactly the same situation where they really don't know a lot about what they're doing. They might be well-spoken, they might be well-dressed, they might be surrounded by good people, they might have excellent resources, they might have been to the best schools. It doesn't really mean that they're going to make the right decision at the end of the day, because they're faced with the same problem that everybody's faced with. which is we all know very, very little about what's going on. And when we try to control things, they don't always go according to plan. And when we try to play with nature, nature always escapes, does its own thing.
Mm.
Does man control nature, or does nature control man? Nature controls man, right? We don't choose what in a sense, we don't really choose what happens to our bodies. Our body decides what happens to us, really, at the end of the day. So it's sort of interesting to look around at the world and see all these decisions being made and all these people pretending that they actually know what's going on and telling other people what to do, which is always the sign of a very large problem, because it means you don't trust anybody. When you decide what everybody should do, it means you don't trust anybody. And when you don't trust people, they're not very happy naturally. Doesn't make for a very happy place, doesn't make for a very happy world. It means that people do stupid things like closing restaurants at 10 o'clock for no real reason, right? Why not 10? Why not 9:30? Why not 10:15? Well, 10 o'clock. It's arbitrary. If you are vaccinated, you can work in a hospital after April next year. If you are not vaccinated, you must leave your job. That makes no sense. It makes no sense at all to make a rule like that. It makes no sense to tell these people to go in and these people to stay out. Makes no sense. It makes no sense to say, we're going to lock down this country from Tuesday next week. It makes no sense. None of it makes any sense. None of it. No, it's all complete insanity. And humans think they can control biology. And then humans die because they can't. And that's the end. Boom. So there we go. So that's my little rant about what is happening.